Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you would like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read my comic books for free and more, you can go to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. That will take you directly to my Patreon page. Basically, it's an all access to my studios. I post work in progress images and blog posts throughout the week, throughout the month. The twice a month bonus live stream, we've got one coming up this Wednesday. So if you're looking to get in for as little as $2 a month, we do our art book study group. We go through some of the best art books around and just dig deep in. I do sketches and studies from them and talk about how I continue to educate myself and try to improve my craft and grow and learn using art books as a tool. We've been working our way through The Figure by Walt Reed. That's coming up this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But there's always replays and archives. If you join up, you have literally hundreds of hours at this point of archive videos from the art book study group that you can check out. I've done studies from George Bridgman, from Ken Holtgren doing animal studies. You can check all of that at patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, you like to get work in progress animated GIFs, little blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching and consuming, what's inspiring me creatively, and more, notifications when I've got new art prints or new books coming out, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter. That's at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. This book is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my current, most recent project, Morning Star. It is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. There's 2 volumes. Volumes 1 contains issues 1 through 4. It's the first half of the story. Volume 2 contains a conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes contain copious sketches and back matter, script excerpts, book layouts, and more, showing you insights into my creative process. You can pick up all of that at amazon.jeremy.net. All right. So, let's see here. See folks already rolling in. We got Byron in the chat. Hey, Byron, how you doing? Jake King's here. He said, "What's good, brother? What's good, people? It's all good." I feel like I have made some significant progress, and I'm going to mention this again in the blog post for Patreon subscribers. So I write notes just on my observations of my creative process as I go. But I feel like what has really happened with this piece was something that is so simple. I feel like an idiot for not thinking of it earlier. But that happens sometimes. You need a little bit of time and distance before you just realize, duh. But the thing that occurred to me is, for all of the difficulty and troubles I've been having on this piece, I thought, I have drawn, not thousands of comic book pages like some Marvel or DC creators, but for an indie creator, I've drawn a few hundred pages at this point, 3 graphic novels worth, plus, however many short stories and little mini projects I've done leading up to starting to publish my own work. And it occurred to me, instead of fighting this whole book, trying to figure out what is the process and how I want it to look, I said, just treat it like a comic book page. Just the very simple process that I've used to draw hundreds of pages before. I do a rough drawing that has a lot of flaws in it, but just do a rough sketch, flip that sketch, make corrections, then ink the corrections. So instead of inking it, I don't know whether I haven't decided whether I'm going to come in with a hard line or whether I'm just going to paint on top of this. So again, yeah, I'm still sort of playing with my process, but I realize I have a creative tool set in place that I'm not using. And I said, well, time to start using it, dumbass. And once I did that, it just started to flow. Let's see. J King says looks good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. At this point, it really is just me trying to find a pattern for all of the serpents that isn't overly cluttered. So I want it to feel full and rich, but I also don't want it to feel so cluttered that it's like I can't tell what's going on. I don't know what's where. So I'm moving some of the serpents around. But structurally, in terms of the figure work, that I'm pretty happy with. So I guess the hardest part at this stage is avoiding tangents, because the minute you you let a piece of this size, the minute you stop paying attention to what you're doing, what your focus is, tangents will just leap out everywhere. And tangents are just when an object, the edge of one object, lines up with the edge of another in a way that makes it difficult to separate the two. So it creates kind of a cluttered composition. For instance, if I were to draw a serpent and have the edge of the serpent, I don't know, let's say I had another serpent come in here and it just ran along the body of this serpent. So right here, you can't tell which one is in front of the other. They're both kind of just lying against each other. So that's a tangent. Is when you've got two forms that are lining up in such a way that one does not clearly overlap the other. You've just got them, the edges just sort of butted up against each other. And that really clutters up your composition. So I am just going through and I'm sort of shifting little pieces of serpent here and there. I'm also wondering, maybe I've got enough serpents. That's actually another thing to consider. So I'm going through here and I'm trying to fill the space. But this is also something that comes from my day job, because I know that when I turn in a composition to be reviewed either internally or to be reviewed by the licensor, they tend to not like negative space, open space. They want everything to be filled with like either a background pattern or a graphic icon. And I don't think that that's a bad thing per se. But I do actually, in my personal work, I used to do quite a bit where I would just draw whatever was the bare minimum that was needed to capture the idea. And I wasn't really worried about filling the space. There's a concept in the arts. You know, it's something that's true for filmmakers, for photographers, hell, for musicians. There's an expression called horror vacui. And as it sounds, it is a fear of empty spaces. And in a lot of arts, people are afraid of empty space. They're afraid to just leave something simple. And I realized that after so many years of doing design work where I know it's not necessarily that I don't think it looks good. It's that I know that if I turn in something that has a large negative space or a large empty area, I will be told to fill that area. People feel like it's unfinished, or even if it's intentional, they just don't like it. Now, the problem is that I find that it's filtering into my personal work, where on my own, maybe some empty space is a good thing. I don't need to fill everything. And I think that's what I'm trying to decide right now is, am I putting too much into this? Am I filling every single space? And I think that, well, the answer is an obvious yes. But the question is then, how do I want to wrap this up? How do I want to cap this off? So I think what I really want is to find one more place to put a serpent's head. And other than that, I think I probably got enough snakes in here. In my sketch, that's why I turned the layer off. In my sketch, I've probably got like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 more in here, and I'm going to eliminate those and turn off my my background sketch. I just want to figure out. I want to get like one more snake head in here, and I want to find a good place for it. And after that, I think it's done. In fact, see, this is another thing. Now I'm getting in here, and I'm nitpicking the composition because as what I do. Turn this light on. Slightly more bright here with my thumbnail. I got this ring light, but I find that when I'm showing my actual books during the intro, the ring light blows out the glossy cover. So I may regret erasing this, but that's one of the things about digital. If I really wanted to, I could just duplicate this layer so I can go back and have the other and go back to what I'm erasing right now if I needed to. But the other thing that I'm trying to do is just say, hey, if I don't like something, go ahead and just paint it out or erase it. And I shouldn't be so precious that I can't, if it turns out that I do want that, I can't just go back and draw it again. Like, I mean, my point is I can go back and redraw that, and I shouldn't be afraid of it. That is what I am more properly trying to express, is not to be afraid of going back and redrawing something. And what's also interesting is I've noticed that all of the serpents in this particular composition, I'm not drawing any of them with their mouths open, bearing fangs. Why? I don't know. I guess in other pieces I've done, it has a certain level of aggression to it, or it implies a certain level of aggression. And in this, I think I'm going for someone, she is calm and collected and regal, and she doesn't need to hiss at anybody. I think that's what I'm trying to say by not having the serpents in a more hostile manner. Like, I feel like that, what I'm hoping comes across is that speaks volumes about her actual demeanor. She is calm. She's in control. She will mess you up if she has to. But for the most part, she's chill. It's just a matter of the thing that I was having some difficulty with, which was having these serpents feel like they are naturally wrapping around into her head. Nah, I don't like that. That's that shape feels too much like it's going into the other snake. This is one, like, generally I try to put overlap in all of my compositions, but I really feel like that one right there was not it was not a helpful overlap of the snakes. Like, they should feel like they were crossing over each other. And in this case, it felt more like, oh, well, you know what, this works. I was going to erase this head and move it up, but I think that this actually works, having the arc come up and around. This is kind of like when authors write write straight ahead, what is frequently referred to as panting versus plotting, where you sit down, you've got a vague idea of where the story's going, and you just write and see where things come. And me, I am very much a plotter. I very much like to know exactly where everything is going. And that's true, as you've seen from the numerous videos I've done about thumbnailing, that I'm the same way with making art. But I think that giving this the breathing space to deviate from my sketch and just change some stuff where I feel it can be a little bit more dynamic, or maybe what I originally sketched out, just it's either too stiff or it just, it hems in the composition a little bit. And it's a good thing to be able to give yourself some breathing space and let the piece evolve beyond just following whatever plan you originally had laid down. And even though I mentioned in writing that I am an inveterate plotter and I really love to figure out my story structure to my detriment, I often figure out my story structure before I've really developed the characters, which can stifle my my character development, make them feel a little bit two-dimensional and flat. I admire, even though I've tried writing straight ahead, I've tried panting before, and I haven't had good results, but I admire it in the sense that I've very much heard, I've heard more than one author say that if the reader doesn't know, if I don't know what is going to happen next, then the reader definitely doesn't know. And I see that as a great strength of writing straight ahead. So when I mention that I am very much a plot and structure guy, I do not mean that with a sense of denigrating writing by the seat of your pants. I think that it is a skill that I don't particularly have, but I try to revisit it every once in a while and write something just not really knowing where it's going. And who knows? It may be that for me, a lot of people start with character and explore the character through the story and find the story through the character. It might be that I find the story and then I do my exploration that way, and I maybe that's what I'm trying to move towards, is using the story as a way to explore and really define and figure out who the character is. So maybe I'm doing all of what I really consider the pantsing is the character development. I don't know, maybe we'll see. I mean, 3 graphic novels, when I think about it, yes, I am very proud of it. Yes, it's a huge accomplishment. But in terms of people that are career writers, it really feels like I have not really put together as significant a body of work as I would like yet. I still have a lot of work to do. So let's see here. Hey, Amar is in the chat. Says happy Sunday to you all. And N is here. Byron says, I'm someone that prefers to write by the seat of my pants. Throw that up there. I'm someone that prefers to write by the seat of my pants. I enjoy finding things out about the story along with the reader, but it does make editing afterwards a bit of a pain. Yeah. Well, see, I mean, that's the funny thing. There's friends of mine who are very much also, right by the seat of their pants. And I always tell them, look, I get people who say that outlining is restricting for them, or it feels like it makes the process stiff. It takes all the fun out of them. I get that and I understand that. And again, it adds another layer to your work. But I always say, you don't have to write your outline at the start. People can. I think you actually get a lot of good benefits by writing your story first by the seat of your pants, and then once you've got that first draft, take the draft and outline that, and then it's just a matter of just transcribing your major story beats and looking at the whole structure, and maybe using kind of what I've heard it referred to as reverse outlining, where you outline after you've done your first draft, but using that as a process for preparing your edit by really giving you a game plan. Because I think editing itself can also be a daunting task where you're just like, all right, the story's not working and I don't know where to start. If you're in that situation, maybe a reverse outline might be beneficial to you, where you just sit down. Because once you sit down and you look at the story structure and you look at the beats, you've already got a general beginning, middle, and end. And from there, you can look at it and say, all right, like when you look at it in an outline form, whether it's just chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and a quick summary of them, maybe it's some authors use spreadsheets where they just have, here's the chapter, here's the characters in this chapter, here's the actual main action of the chapter, and they just go through that way. But being able to look at it in a structural form, then you can start moving the pieces around, moving the chess pieces across the board and saying, oh, wait, I have this scene here at the end that I really love. Let me move some pieces over here to set that up properly. Let me introduce this character who's going to cause this turn to be there. Or, oh, wait, I realize I have 3 characters that are kind of fulfilling the same function in the story. Why don't I collapse them all into one character? And then I can go back and rewrite all of those scenes that have those different characters and make it that one single character and make that character through line make sense in the story. So outlining can be helpful even if you're a write by the seat of your pants writer. And by the same token, I am attempting, as I go forward in my writing, I'm attempting to bring more seat of the pants writing into my structure. Because as we've seen, I said before, I think it's a matter of using all the tools in the toolbox, not necessarily just picking one path or one style and that being your be all end all. Let's see here. Amar says, that helps me write the story faster. I can also get into, oh wait, I think I may have missed his first comment. Let me go up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And hey, Castiel's here too. Hey, good to see you, man. Thanks for popping in. Yeah, Amar says, I'm a plotter. I need to know what's going to happen for all the episodes. That way I can write it easier. And to that's where Byron commented, oh, damn it, interface is getting in the way. But to that, he said, everyone has their own process at the end of the day. It's all about finding what works best for you. The milking it for all it's worth. I hear you, man. I feel it. We're the milkmaids. Milking that story and art. Yeah, Amar says it helps him write the story faster. Can get into the story and act it out in my head from each character's perspective. See, that's crazy. Since I wrote the plot for my 16 issues of my comic in 2018, I have failed in my personal plan of writing every day for at least a half hour. I keep telling myself that I need to do it, but the problem that I'm finding is simply that most days I am not getting enough. It's not that I'm not getting enough art done. It's that art for me serves, I think for a lot of us, it serves a certain level of mental health and self-care. And I find at the end of the day that what I am lacking is that time just sitting alone at the drawing table. And that time that I could be spending getting some writing done, I'm like, I really just want to sketch or do some figure studies or, work on an illustration. Okay, that serpent does not look particularly good that I drew on there. Let's see here. Yes, Byron says, I think the thing with me is that that any writing of a thing ultimately ends up becoming the thing in my mind. I hate iteration. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it as few times as possible. You know what? I understand that. That said, for me, iteration is the only way I get to something that I like. I never, whether it's writing or drawing, I very rarely have drawn anything and been like, first pass, that's awesome. Everything for me is iteration. And I've mentally trained myself. I don't know if I've trained myself or whether it's my disposition naturally, but I really do thrive on iteration. I don't look at it as a punishment or a chore. Um, in fact, when I was working on the dragon painting, I have all of these. I can grab one of them. So you guys remember when I was doing all of those thumbnails for the dragon paintings, and I was doing them on the live stream. Turn this ring light off. So I took these thumbnails, and there's like 3 sets of them, and I took them and I framed them, and I'm keeping them by my desk, not because I'm proud of these, not because these are like the best thumbnails I've ever done, but I have them hanging up as a reminder in case I ever feel like I forget my process. Because basically doing those thumbnails was me relearning how to paint again. It was me reteaching myself and adding on things that I have learned since I was an art student that help with my process now. And it's good for me to have that there as a reminder that when I get lost, I have all of these other techniques and processes that are there for me, that I have used throughout my life, that I can rely on. So I just wanted to have those there as a reminder. But the whole point is that it's a reminder of process. It's a reminder of my process, of my iteration. So yeah, like I said, I get wanting to knock it out of the park on the first try, but my mind simply doesn't work that way. My mind is like, no, nothing ever comes out good the first time. So, which again, perfectionism. Let's see here. SEL asks, are you talking about making stories? Well, we're talking about the writing process in general, because I was making a comparison between writing by the seat of your pants and me giving myself space to deviate from the thumbnail sketch that I have that's underneath here. If I turn this off, it's pretty faint, but I have it in blue line here. My rough sketch, I started kind of deviating from that and finding places where I'm like, okay, this is the place where I need to actually just be creative. I can't just stick to my sketch. I've got to do something. And once we started talking about that, then we were just talking about writing in general and writing from your seat of your pants versus panting versus plotting. And once we get going, you get a bunch of comic creators hanging out. We'll just start talking about the creative process all day long. It's just we're going to run in the mouth about this. But like I said, I've been doing far less writing than I should be. This was going to be the year that I was going to really get back to my. It was the year where I was going to transform writing from something I do every once in a while to something that I do regularly. And to clarify, the way that I have written all of my previous comic books is that I work on the project, I write it, I rewrite it, I get it to the point where I'm done with it, then it's done, and then I start drawing. And I'm drawing all the time until I finish that comic. And I might be thinking about my next project. I'm usually making notes and building the world kind of bit by bit, but I don't really start writing the next project until I'm done with the previous one. And I've realized that the problem with that is much in the way that, again, tying it back to visual arts, much in the way that it's been so long since I was doing traditional painting that I had to reteach myself how to paint. I find, or I have found over the past 2 volumes of Morningstar, that I've had to relearn how to write each time I come back to write a new volume. And the problem is the gap. The problem is not writing every day consistently. When I stop, when I take breaks, it doesn't matter what you do. Like even my figure drawing class, I was off for a couple of weeks, and I found that, again, with figure drawing class, because I wasn't working on figure studies regularly during the break, we're only off for like maybe a month at most. But I came back, and those first 2 weeks, the drawings were horrible, and I was kind of like, I had to relearn to figure draw again, even though I've been doing it for a decade. Anything that I do, if I stop doing it, I lose the ability to do it. It will come back if I get back into the practice, but I lose the ability to do it. And I realized that if I want to continue to tell stories visually as making comics, I need to stop stopping. I need to make writing a regular part of my habit as much as drawing, where I'm doing it every day, even if it's for a brief period. And when I finish whatever project I'm working on, to just start writing the next project and always have that flow there. Always have that skill set so that I can tap into. And yeah, there'll still be days where good days and bad days where it's the writing isn't coming. But that's true with my sketches. I've got good days and bad days with the sketching. So that was actually going to be my goal for 2021, and I failed. And so far, I'm failing in 2022. And I'm saying it out loud to try and shame myself into sticking with it. And I know you guys are pretty forgiving. You're like, everyone's got their process. You got to go easy on yourself. But I'm saying it because it's one of those things like declaring your intentions to the universe. I'm telling the universe, yes, I intend to write every day for the rest of the year and for the rest of my life, even if it's only like 30 minutes a day. And if I keep saying it, eventually I'm going to be like, look, I gotta start being about it. So you're going to hear me bring it up again and again, like a broken record, until I start getting into it. Because once I get into the habit, you're not going to hear me talk about it, because you're just going to hear me talking about writing in general. But this whole ongoing thing about I need to do it every day, I need to do it every day, I am harping on it more for me than because it's something that it's more for me than for something you guys need to hear about. I'm doing it to try and shame myself into sticking with one of my goals that I've been falling down on. And hopefully that doesn't come off as me beating myself up, because you know how I feel about that. I feel like we are frequently too harsh on ourselves emotionally as creatives. But this is something that is important, and I really do need to commit to it and stick to it. And I'm going to get back to the chat in a second. I'm just coming in here, and I might be getting a little bit too detailed, but I'm trying to fix this serpent's face. And it's one of those things where I'm trying to use as few lines as possible, but still get that sense of both structure and character. But yeah, looking at this, these are all of the serpents that I'm going to have. I think that works for me, serpent-wise. So let's see what we got in the comments. Let's see here. Amar says, I can still go back to update those plots based on changes in the universe and write without missing a beat. So that's another thing about outlining. It doesn't block you in. I did it by taking long periods of times where I was stopping. But when I was working on Morningstar, I started volume 2. Before I started volume 2, I went back and I rewrote the last 4 issues because there were huge story chunks that I hadn't really worked out. So here, Byron D, in terms of talking about wanting to get everything down as few times as possible, since otherwise I end up losing passion for the creation aspect. I get that. I completely get that. Like, I'm a weirdo. in the fact that I've got like this series that I worked on 8 issues over the course of a decade. I am weird in that I can work on a project that is very slow and takes me a long time to chew through and just stick with it because that's my comfort zone, is to sit down and just do one thing over and over again. Cassiel says, you have questioned about why we tell stories. Well, I didn't really ask that question. I think it's a very, very deep philosophical question in terms of why we tell stories. I mean, that's a bigger question of why do human beings tell stories? And I don't know why, but I don't think that I'm that interested in understanding the why, only because I don't think it's going to make me, understanding why human beings tell stories isn't going to make me want to tell stories more. And I don't think it's going to make me want to tell stories less. Now, who knows? Maybe it's worth asking why humanity tells stories, because it might make me better. I think that that's a fair point and that's worth asking, but it isn't something that I personally think about that much. Let's see here. Cassiel says, I read a story a long time ago. And Amar says, yeah, I have tons of stories without plots. And the base of the stories, I'm left in a maze of thoughts. Even today I was reading a novel and it gave me an idea for what easily could be an entire graphic novel series. But I just made the notes for what I need in order to come back to it and flesh it out. And my main thoughts are simply to start with it as a short story. And what I'm really trying to do going forward is, instead of writing these massive, not massive, 8 issues isn't really massive, but it feels massive when you're writing and drawing the whole thing yourself. Instead of writing these longer epic stories, to really try to hone in on what is the core of that story, tell it as a short standalone story. Like even with Morningstar, if I could have just written Morningstar instead of writing it as an 8-issue series, to write it as a series, almost like Hellboy, where it's a series of short stories, I think that it would free me up creatively, having a shorter commitment to get a piece of the story done. So I'm trying to think of more projects in that manner instead going forward. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says he's got a log line for each project. Here, Cassiel says he's got a surrealist story. I was seeing some Salvador Dali paintings, and I thought, what if I make a story about dreams? I think that's very cool. I think lots of art and lots of storytelling comes from creators' dreams. And I think accessing the subconscious is a very powerful tool. All right, I'm going to flip this back to the original orientation I had. This is the other thing. I know that a lot of artists flip back and forth while they work. For some reason, I find that distracting. Whereas if I simply flip once, make corrections, and then flip back. Now, yes, I'm going to make more corrections now, but I feel like I get closer to what I want. This is where I feel like I'm being less of a perfectionist. Instead of flipping back and forth as I go, I feel like I'm just going to continue making and reversing the same decisions. Whereas if I reverse it one time, fix things, and then come back and say, all right, what does or doesn't look right, and adjust those things, and then just say, all right, now I'm done. That feels a little bit more direct to me. That feels like a little bit less back and forth. So that's an area where I'm similar to you, Byron. It's like instead of just the endless flipping, to just do it you know once and then correct the corrections. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, once I start the project, I can determine how long it will take for the complete arc of the story to be told. He says, since I am a lucid dreamer, most of my stories, or at least some of them, were already acted out in my dreams. I am a lucid dreamer as well. I've been ever since I was a little kid. I find it's a joy. I actually look forward to going to bed every night because it's like entering kind of a writing lab slash entering a movie that's in my head every night. For those who don't know, if you've never heard the term lucid dreaming, what it means is that you are dreaming, but you are aware that you're dreaming. So you're not awake per se, but you're conscious of the fact that what you're experiencing is not reality. And I've had these kind of dreams. I mean, it's kind of a being sort of somewhere between a waking state and a sleeping state. But I've had lucid dreams ever since I was a child. And I can't remember where it was that I found a book that talked about what they were, but it never freaked me out. I didn't think it was weird. In fact, I thought it was weird that a lot of people or most people don't have lucid dreams, or they only have them every once in a while. Where I would say for me, lucid dreaming is probably about maybe not quite 50-50, but maybe 60-40. It's definitely a significant number of my dreams are lucid. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, I have done it for video games. I eventually want to create. Castiel's got a short story. He takes some things that Dolly does with female figures and elephants. They said there's an ending. The ending was me waking up from the dream. Castiel, I would recommend taking a look at the work of Heinrich Clay. He is an artist who inspired Fantasia. Like a lot, if you look at a lot of the animals in Fantasia, and I can't remember. I know that at some point Walt Disney did meet Heinrich Clay. Actually, you know what? No, I'm thinking of Salvador Dali. Walt Disney did actually plan to collaborate with Salvador Dali. They actually, not plan to. They did. They made a film. It just was never a theatrical release, but you can see it online called, I think it's called Destino. But Fantasia itself was very, very influenced and inspired by the paintings and drawings of Heinrich Clay. It's Clay with a K. If someone else wants to put the spelling in the chat, I'm too lazy to type it, but you guys are on top of it, I know. So somebody feel free to drop that in the chat. But anyway, yeah, he is an amazing artist. He's sort of like, if you're familiar with Claire Wendling, Heinrich Clay was sort of like the proto Claire Wendling, the Claire Wendling before Claire Wendling. Beautiful, whimsical, magical looking creatures, animals that were anthropomorphic. Yes, just beautiful work. You should definitely check it out if you're interested and inspired by the work of Salvador Dali. I feel like Clay is less surrealistic, but he has sort of the whimsy and magic that a lot of Salvador Dali's work has. So definitely worth checking out. Here. Byron says, I think personality type definitely has a key aspect to it all. Creativity is such an interesting part of the human psychology because it is unique to each person. Which, by the way, guys, just so you know, I am skipping around comments only because I will, if I read every single comment, I will stop drawing, and I don't want to stop drawing. So just so you know, that's why I know that you guys are cool with it, but I'm explaining just the context of why I'm jumping around in terms of the comments. So, you know, read a few comments, draw a little bit, read a few more comments, draw a little bit, but not read every comment. Because I will tell you, I am enjoying myself. I'm having fun moving the pieces around on these serpents, and I'm trying to finalize this piece, or at least finalize the sketch phase. Just adjusting the neck on this guy here. One of the things I'm also looking at, and the reason why I've got those thumbnails that I pointed to or that I showed you that I have on my wall, is I'm trying to look at all of the stuff that I already do that I feel I do well, and I'm trying to find ways to bring that into my digital work, because I often think that I am fighting myself and I'm trying to relearn these digital skills when in fact I've already got the skills. I'm just trying to force the digital to do things in a different way instead of just replicate. And when I say do different things, I'm not talking about the actual, like, how does the software work? I'm talking about my thumbnail process, my process for working out values. I'm talking about process in terms of what I'm choosing to draw to get to the final piece versus how the software itself works. If that makes any sense. Like I know that if I just sit down and do a bunch of color thumbnails, I tried to do a bunch of thumbnails for working out what piece I wanted to do, which Medusa piece I wanted to do, and I ended up, that was the thing. The idea generation part of it was fine. That was not a problem for me. It was solving the solving the aspect of what I'm doing now, working out the actual anatomy of the figure. And for that, again, I had the answers. The answers were, what do I do when I'm drawing comics? And then just do that. So it's another thing that I am trying to do in these current days of moving into doing more digital work, is simply trying to look at what I already do. And I hesitate to say the word do well because, I'm hard on myself. But let's just say it. Let's just say it. Let's say it with the caveat of that I always put on. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. But the things that I do well, I'm not taking advantage of, and I'm trying to take more advantage of that and be aware that a lot of times I'm putting unnecessary roadblocks in my path, and I'm trying to remove those roadblocks so I can make more art and cooler art and faster art and share all of it with you guys. Let's see here. You guys are having a pretty interesting conversation in the chat. Yeah, Amar was saying in terms of outlining, he says, once you have all of that, you can access a project at any time. He said there's nothing blocking you from writing. You've got like your plot, your structures all laid out there, which, I mean, hell, that's the reason why a lot of people, like in television, outlining is a must. In film, not necessarily. A lot of screenwriters, it really comes down to their temperament. While a lot of screenwriters do outline, it's not necessarily 100%. I've definitely heard interviews with great screenwriters who just sit down and go page one and just start trying to figure it out. It's funny, the Medusa that I've got right here, the Gorgon, King's Little Fit had pointed out on our Discord server that the form that she's taking is very similar to another piece that I have, except instead of serpents having snake heads, there's eyes, there are eyeballs at the end of each, what would be the body of the serpent. And the eyeballs are more sort of to represent something like a beholder. If you guys are familiar with that Dungeons and Dragons fantasy creature, it's kind of a giant floating ball with a bunch of eyeball stalks hanging off of it. I do have to look at a little bit of reference to look at what the underside of the chin of a snake looks like, because I know on the underside of their bellies, they have the horizontal treads, like a tire tread, and that switches to the scales on the side. You know what? And while I'm doing this, I think I'm going to give it a little sense of dimension. We turn. So the serpent is turning as it's getting down. You're seeing more and more of the treads as it gets further up here. But I don't know if those treads are on the underside of the head as well. I don't imagine that they are. So I don't know if the underside is just a different colored scale, or whether it is I don't know if it's a different colored scale, or whether it's very, very small scale so it appears smooth. I don't know, and I like to be on point with my reference, so I'm going to take a look. And it's weird that I spend all of this time drawing snakes, because I'm not a snake person. I think like a lot of kids, I was afraid of snakes as a child, and then I had a friend who lived across the street from me who owned a boa constrictor, and I was a weird kid in that I had I think I still do have a lot of control issues, and I did not like the idea of being afraid. It consciously bothered me that I wouldn't go over to my friend's house now because he had a snake and I did not like going in his room and seeing a snake. So I forced myself to hold his snake, to pet it, to feel it wrapping around my hand, because it was a baby boa constrictor. So it was like maybe 18 inches long, not even 2 feet long. So it was a baby. But just feeling that, it still freaked me out as a little kid, to feel this thing wrapping around and gripping and squeezing your hand. It's looking at my hand like, can I eat you? But I forced myself to hold it and handle it. And so I can handle snakes. I wouldn't say that I've come around to becoming a snake lover, but I forced myself to confront my fear, so I'm not terrified of them anymore. but I don't go out of my way to handle snakes. Yet I'm fascinated by gorgons, which are very snake centric. All right, let me come over to the comments because I really got caught up in my blah blah blah. I want to talk about your blah blah blah. See, by the way, the time goes by so fast. I'll go for a while longer, maybe another 20 minutes or so. But we're already at like 56 minutes. So, an hour goes by quick. Let's see here. Cassiel mentions later I was studying the theory, like 3-act structure or Dan Harmon's story circle. Sometimes I throw in words that I know go in there context wise. Like he says the Dan Harmon circle. It's called a story circle, where he kind of shows how a plot comes to. Neither here nor there. I just threw in words. I'm just noting that. Let's see. He says making characters, creating conflict, dialogue, etc. And I've read down what makes this movie interesting and dissect characters and movies. Let's see here. Amar says, I never had writer or art block. You know what? I will tell you that I never have writer or art block either. However, what I do have all the time is, and this is something I've only found in recent years, is sometimes I'm just not in the mood to make art. That happens. And that's weird for me, given how much I talk about the process and how much I'm enthusiastic most days and looking to draw and write and sketch. But there's definitely times when I'm just not in. It's not that I don't know what to do. It's that mood wise, I look at it and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. I want to. It's not usually like I want to go play video games, but it's more like I'd rather sit down and read a comic book. It's not a block. It's that I want to spend some time consuming content instead of creating content. Now, a lot of times it's the opposite. The reason why I don't spend as much time consuming content, because I talk about how I try to limit my TV, is because I have a hard time enjoying it when I know I have things to draw. But that is the closest that I get to art block and writing block. It's not I don't know what to do. It's that I am not in the mood to do it. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, when I sit down to write, that's all I'm able to focus on. Then I can get a lot of writing done in a short amount of time. You know what? Your level of focus is not common to a lot of people. I think for a lot of writers and artists, distraction is the hardest thing. Like once you get, there's a point where for some people, and this is not me talking about me, this is me talking about observing and having conversations with other creatives. There's some people who can fall right into the flow and focus. I used to have that ability, and I think I've lost it by training myself to work whenever I have a moment's break. But for I think most people, there's a point where you start out, you're distracted, you're having a hard time focusing and staying on it, and it takes maybe a few hours. No, not a few hours. It takes like maybe a half hour to an hour to fall into the groove. And then once you get into the groove, I mean, sometimes it can be as quick as 10 or 15 minutes, but once you get into the groove, you just go. But I think a lot of people get distracted and they never make it to that half hour mark. They'll start working and 20 minutes in, something pops up and they want to remember this, they want to do that, or they get a phone call, something else comes up that distracts them. And I think that the ability to resist distractions it's a muscle that needs to be built up. Not everyone has it naturally. And like I can say for myself, it's also a muscle that you can lose, because I used to have that focus. And now I'm more like somebody who will work in 30 to 60-minute increments throughout the day, as opposed to working on a long block. Let's see here. Here, Cassiel says, "Wow, I never talked so much about my experience with writing." Well, you know what? This is a place where we like to share and talk process. So I am glad that that you're enjoying it and you're having fun sharing with everybody. See here. Oh yeah. Amar says that comes from years of acting stuff out in my head and the lucid dreaming, but organization is always especially key for me. You know what? I think you just hit the nail in the head in terms of what I was talking about focus. The reason why I think a lot of people don't have focus is because a lot of people aren't organized. I myself tend to be real organized, but I've become more disorganized in recent years in my life. And I think that that's played a large role in my productivity slowing down to some degree. You know, I think it really makes drawing the serpents a lot easier if I focus on that underside. I just need to figure out how I'm turning this guy in space. Because if we're looking, this is his back, still his back. So the question is, does it twist over like that? I think it does. Just use that as a little nudge to describe the change of his path. Let's see here. Amar says, I have a weird dream this morning that Will Smith called me from a connector competition to listen to a pitch of one of my stories. He says, weird dream, but I woke up looking for the log lines. See here. Cassiel says, the thing I pay attention in my dreams is the scenario. In my dreams, that look like liminal spaces. We see the internet. Here. More dream talk. Yeah, Amar says, my dreams, I can go anywhere because I am Neo in my dream. I have the keys to the matrix of my dreams. That is pretty dope. I'm curious, did any of you guys see the new Matrix Resurrections? Oh, I also see some comments. I jumped down towards the end only because I kept seeing that there's a bunch of comments in here that I was missing. So I was curious. I see some new folks. I see Harry's in the chat, and also Philip. Let me first off, Philip says, You related to Michelangelo or something? This is awesome. You first off, you are extremely kind. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. Secondly, the art instructor that I've spent a lot of time studying with, Carl Ganas, um, he very much his approach to teaching is built around Michelangelo and about how Michelangelo was able to try to get because Michelangelo thought himself more as a sculptor. Well, he was more of a sculptor than he was a two-dimensional painter or draftsman. But that when he did use drawing and painting, he learned how to light and shade and model form to create a sense of sculptural, structural form with it, to it. And that's kind of what even with this, it's a line drawing, but that's sort of what I keep in mind is going for that sculptural, structural sense for my instructor. Harry has a question. Harry says, what's the most important for a comic to sell well, drawing or writing? My answer, you're not going to like, it's both. I say that because these days there are so many comic books that have both good writing and good drawing that I don't think you can really afford to slack on either one. Now, I know plenty of people who will read a comic book character, like let's say they're a Batman or Spider-Man fan, they will read it no matter who's writing it, as long as the art is cool. And I know people who really don't care that much about the story. They just want to see cool shots and they want to see their character doing cool things. The actual narrative is not that important to them. I am, oddly enough, I am an artist, but I personally won't read a comic book if the story isn't good, no matter how great the art is. And I say that coming from the standpoint that if I just want to see this artist do cool imagery, then I will go buy their sketchbook. I don't need, if I just want to see my favorite artist drawing cool shit, I will just go look at their art. I don't need to buy a comic book with a bad story in it. So for me personally, it's not that the writing is more important, but I have read some comic books that had some art that was really not great, but I found the narrative interesting enough that I stuck with it and I actually ended up enjoying the book. So I can appreciate comic books that don't necessarily have great artwork in it, even though I'm an artist. But I think that I am the minority in that belief. So you can't take what I say as gospel. I'm really not the minority. I think most people will say for comics, it's the art first. That said, when you look at the big two, when you look at Marvel and DC comics, the ones that they are talking about, it's this new person's book or that new person's book. Usually the person they're talking about who's doing a new run on a book, it's usually the writer. And the writer is the one who's sort of controlling where the characters are going these days. So, that's something also to take into consideration. You ask 100 different comic fans what's more important, the writing or the art, you're going to get 100 different answers. So in the end, I pointed out that I am aware that my opinion is not necessarily shared. Well, it's definitely, I definitely don't think it's shared by a lot of artists, but I don't think that it's necessarily the mainstream opinion, but you need to decide for yourself. So I think it's fine as a topic of conversation, you asking what my opinion is in terms of what I like. But I think that the question, what's more important, the art or the story, I think that comes down to the individual fan. Because, a lot of people say, well, if you take away the art, then all you have is just a prose novel. It's not comics. But by the same token, if you take away the art, if you take away the story, then all you have is just an art book. Now, when I say just an art book, that's still not diminishing the artist's contributions because, there are a lot of artists, most artists tend to have a sense of narrative in their work in still images. Whether you're talking comic artists, You look at a lot of cover artists, somebody like an Adam Hughes or a Ryan Sook. I mean, I know Ryan Sook is doing interiors again, but you look at guys like that. Their standalone pieces still have a lot of story in them. What I'm really thinking of is the fantasy artist Brahm, who has moved out of solely illustrating to now he is writing illustrated novels. So he's still doing all of the work, but he's also writing the narrative as well. That is a long ramble that in the end, I mean, I already covered my answer, which is for it depends. Everyone's going to have their own answer. I will read a badly drawn comic with a great story, but I probably won't read a great, well-drawn comic book with a story that is poor or pointless. So there you go. For me, I guess maybe the writing. The reason why I'm waffling is because my original answer was they're equally important. That I lost the thread of my answer. My answer is they are equally important. They're equally important. My favorite comic creative team right now is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, because they're two different people who, when you read the book, you can't tell where the writing ends and the drawing begins, in the sense that they meld together so seamlessly that it feels like it was something that was created by like Will Eisner or Frank Miller drawing his own comic, where the art and the writing are one. The answer is the industry is a visual medium, but it's visual narrative storytelling. So the writing and the art are equally important. They're in partnership. The best comics are when they work the best together. And when you start dividing them or putting one against the other, you're weakening what the medium is all about. That's my opinion. All right, let me scroll back up real quick before I go further down, only because I did skip over a bunch of comments to get down to Harry and Phillips' comments. Let's see here. I'm growing up. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, I once saw an Oprah interview and it unlocked my issue and allowed me to control the outcome of those dreams. He said that's why I connected with the Matrix so much, because I had experienced something in my dreams, at least no more than a decade before the movie. He said I've had many dreams where I woke up to go to the bathroom and went back mad because I could not get back into the dream. I've definitely had that, where I've had those dreams where I wanted to continue and I was pissed off that I couldn't. I've also had dreams where I've gotten up, gone to the bathroom, gone back to sleep, and picked up right where I left off. That happens very rarely, but it does happen with me. He says, if I could ever bring the person from my dreams out into the universe, I would be a totally different person. I don't know if I'm really that different from my conscious self. Is that different from my dream self? I find myself having conversations in dreams, and then I wake up and I'm like, no, that's pretty much how I think I would react in real life. And I've also had dreams where it's hard. Well, Cassiel mentions that. He says, sometimes I think, is this real? Is this world real? This happens a lot of times. And Amar says it's never happened to me. Jay King says, at work, brother, thank you. People enjoy always. Glad you were able to hang out with us. I don't know if you're still on, but either way, I wish you peace and love. I hope you have a creative and productive week. What's interesting to me is I've never had the problem of not being sure. I've never had the problem of being awake and wondering if I was dreaming, but I all the time have times when I am dreaming and I can't tell, and I think that I'm awake. That happens a lot. In fact, I had a dream. I talk about I don't know if I've talked about this recently, but I had a dream a long time ago that had a huge impact on me, in that I dreamt I was in sort of The Walking Dead, and I was being we were being attacked by zombies, and they were sort of approaching this camp, and we could hear them coming over the hills. We had like tin cans wrapped around tree branches in a forest, so we could hear them when they come. Um, and but I was also having a lucid dream, and at a certain point, I was just like, "Look, I'm not running from them because this isn't real. I'm dreaming. It's fine. I'm gonna be safe." And what's crazy is that in the dream, my one of the people that was in the camp said, "Look, if you're right and this is just a dream, then coming with us is not going to hurt you. You're gonna be, you're gonna be fine one or the other. So just come with us." We're basically, they were going to hide in this cave. And they were gonna roll a boulder in the front of it so the zombies couldn't get at them. And they told me, "Look, if you're right, then what difference does it make if you come with us? Well, but if you're wrong, you're going to die, and you're going to die horribly. You're going to get ripped apart. So just come with us." And I sat there and I thought to myself, in movies, usually in like zombie movies or apocalyptic movies, there's always somebody who has kind of a psychotic break and they can't deal with reality. I'm like, this isn't happening. This isn't real. And I thought, huh, if I were in a zombie apocalypse and I did have a psychotic break, that might be exactly what I'm thinking. And I'd like to think I wouldn't be that guy, but maybe I am. And so I went with the person that was trying to get me to go with them to the cave. And I went to the cave, and we rolled a boulder in front of it, and we shut it up, we locked it up, and then I woke up. But how weird was it that part of my subconscious, even though I was having a lucid dream and I knew that I was dreaming, part of my consciousness actively campaigned to convince me that I was not dreaming, even though I was certain that I was. And that has haunted me. That's I don't know why it's upsetting to me, but it feels like I can't trust my own consciousness if it's trying to get me to believe things that aren't real. So yeah, that's that's probably the closest I've had to what you're talking about, Cassiel. And I mean, I talk about it. It comes back to me all the time. I've never forgotten that because it's just the strangest dream experience I've ever had. And I've had some weird ass dreams. All right, we're almost at about an hour 20 here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop drawing, and I'm going to try and run through the last few comments here, and I'm going to see if there's any questions that anyone has they want me to answer before we call it a day, and then I'm going to shut it down. But I feel like I have made a lot of progress on this piece. I'm probably still going to come in and maybe tweak her face a little bit more, but this really does feel like it's coming along well. And there's something about drawing all of the scales that I find very soothing. This part that I just did right there, where it's kind of an armband wrapping around, I don't feel like I've executed that very well, so I'm going to come in and tweak it a little bit more. Let's see here. I think this might be from when I was talking about, when I was talking about procrastination. Amar says, procrastination excuses is my out. This is like, let me go take a nap, or I don't know how to draw that background or a particular thing. Well, you know what? Yeah, he says, so instead of doing a really deep dive, I find it out. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not somebody who gets blocked. I just say, I'm not in the mood to do this. Let's see here. Asiel asks if anyone has tested the snowflake method, and I do not know what the snowflake method is, but I'm guessing that it will come up in the chat here. So I don't know, so I haven't tested it. Let's see here. Amar says, like, I don't know steampunk, and since I don't really want to, the music video project I started in the mid 2020s, he said, I abandoned it because it was a level of complexity for animating a project became overwhelming for me. Yeah, I get that. Starting something and finding out it's too big. But I try not to take on projects that I'm not going to be passionate about, because that's how, when you take on something you're going to be passionate about, that's how you finish a graphic novel, even if it takes 10 years. So yeah, I think that's a big tip for everybody, is try to stick with stuff that you're passionate about. Let's see here. Cassiel mentions he watched Clockwork Orange a few days ago, and it's very interesting. Yeah, I think it's an amazing movie. I haven't gone back and rewatched it in ages, but it's fantastic. Um, yeah, Cassiel says the first part of the movie was a little what, and then he said, "I understand why this shocked so many people at the time." He said, "But it's explicit and stylized at the same time how he shows the violence." I mean, yeah, Kubrick's a visionary, man. It's a trippy film. I've actually wanted to go back and read the book. I just never have had time. I mean, yes, time is in short supply. My to read list is way too long. See here, Amar says, "I would always say the story, because without the story, you have no comic. Flashy art does nothing for a comic with a bad story." Yeah, it sounds like Amar's a lot is similar in terms of my opinion there on that. Like, again, I still go back to the original answer was, it's not an either or. Both are important and both should be great. And what I think is great about the modern day of comics is that there are so many great comics out there that that have both excellent writing and art. So to me, that's probably the most important thing. I mean, there's enough great stuff. You don't have to choose. And if you're somebody who's a creator, I think if you're a writer, you're going to strive to do the best writing you're going to do. If you're an artist, you can strive to do the best art you can do. And if you're somebody who's a cartoonist or a creator who writes and draws, you're going to try to do the best at both. So again, equally important. But like I said, opinions, not laws. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says writing is 100% important to me. Great character development and pacing is where everything is connected. He says you can read that alone without the illustrations. Harry says, in my opinion, great story is mainly the characters and the theme. And Cassiel's, but why do we tell stories? And Harry says, I think it's to give life experiences to others. Yeah, you know what? I think you're onto something there, Harry, because all art, to me, writing, drawing, music, poetry, all of it, filmmaking, is telepathy. That's how I think of it. It is telepathy slash empathy. It is taking an experience that you are having internally in your heart and in your mind and trying to recreate or transmit some portion of that experience to someone else. It's never the same as transporting someone directly into your mind, but it is trying to get down on paper or on film, seeing the world through your own eyes. It is taking what's inside of our heads and trying to translate it into someone else's head through some sort of medium. Video games. I left out video games. I mean, video games are a huge storytelling medium. I don't even really game anymore. I stopped gaming basically in college, but I recognize how much more advanced the storytelling in games have gotten. Down to the point where I'll watch the cinematic scenes from some movies just to get a sense of the story. Not that I have any time, but if I did have time to play games, the two games I would play is Red Dead Redemption, because I finished doing a major Western comic book, and I would probably want to play BioShock Infinite, because I've just heard such great things about the narrative twist in the entire game structure. But those are the kind of things where it's really fascinating new ways of storytelling. Let's see here. Philip says, Amar is making me have an existential crisis. I'm starting to think I'm in a simulation. Let's see here. Harry says, when you read a great story, you're really shocked. Cassiel says, yeah, you're having an existential crisis. Harry says, "Welcome to the club, dude." Yeah, I think being a creative is living in a constant state of existentialism because you know there's the why do we make the things that we make, and then it's like why do we make anything? Why is anything? I mean, and I've got to the point where I don't chase these existential questions as much anymore, only because I found that I haven't read a ton of philosophy. For what I have read, the whole point is that philosophy is just various ways of thinking about and interpreting the world, but none of them have the answer. All of the religions of the world, all of the philosophies of the world, you know, while many claim that they are the one answer, if there was one answer, I really do think that everyone would believe it. Well, no, that's actually not true. It's very possible there could be one true answer and people bury it or people refuse because they want to stick with their answer. So I might be wrong about that. But from what I've read of philosophy, and there's a book by Carl Jung called Modern Man's Search for Meaning that also I might be getting that confused with Viktor Frankl's book. There's one that's Modern Man's Search for Meaning and Modern Man's Search for a Soul. Viktor Frankl, I can't remember which one's which. But the point being is that all these things are different ways to think about the world, but none of them are the truth, the quote unquote answer. There is no answer. So that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, the meaning of existence is the meaning that you build for yourself. It's not that life is pointless, it's that you have to decide what life means to you and to those around you. And hopefully that will guide you to treat others around you well, regardless of your personal tenets and faith and where you live. Hopefully it'll lead you into a positive place as opposed to a negative place. But again, just opinions, just opinions. Philip says, bruh, if I'm in a simulation, the architect who maybe made a terrible job of putting me in level 4. Oh, we're getting to that Matrix talk. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar, I guess talking more about art versus writing. It says adding makeup and fine clothes are not needed to tell her story, but it enhances that story when needed. I think that's another good way to look at it. Let's see here. I see Harry and Philip have a few more comments. I'm only skipping over those. So I'm just looking for some stuff that are maybe some final questions to wrap up here before I call it a day. Let's see here. By the way, you guys, if you're new to the channel and you haven't watched before, please subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get notifications when I've got new live streams. I do this weekly, every Sunday. It's 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So whatever time this is, your local, that's when we do it again next week. And definitely, if there's other people that would enjoy this kind of conversation, this kind of live stream, please share it with them because I'm trying to grow the channel, trying to reach more people, get out to more people. So, and I don't want to just share just for share's sake because I don't think that really helps anybody. I want, there's this very specific type of person that's going to like the type of live stream I have here. Some people like to just watch time lapses. Some people like to watch a bunch of artists sit down and dissect a particular topic. My live streams specifically are just, I sit down with whatever I'm working on. I turn on the camera and I let you guys look over my shoulder and we just talk while I'm working. So this is more of a hanging out in the studio in process. There's a great artist, Peter Palmiotti. He does on his live stream. He specifically call it studio synergy, where he would just have artists together all in their studio doing what I'm doing now. He's definitely another guy to check out. But that's the vibe of what I've got here. So it's less topic-based and more hanging out in the studio, working on whatever I'm working on. So let's see here. More dream talk. Let's see here. Amar says, I've had many dreams where I was flying around saving people, and I've not had many of those in like 10, 20 years. You're going to stop having those astral plane dreams. And Harry says, because drugs. It's funny. I have not delved deeply into mind-altering experiences. Never had them. But that said, it's really, I think that I don't think I draw that weird or that trippy of stuff. Although I do draw a lot of dark stuff, and people that see my art first and then meet me, people who see my artwork first presume that I'm sort of a really dark, twisted weirdo. And then when they meet me, they're kind of disappointed by how bored I am. And then people that know me and know that I tend to be kind of upbeat, chipper, kind of goofy, then they see my artwork and they wonder, are you a serial killer? Because they're like, how does this really sometimes unpleasant artwork and ideas come out of the personality of somebody who seems to be kind of chipper? And for me, it's more that, art is a way for exercising one's demons. And I think that, any negativity that I might deal with and experience in my life, I get out through the artwork. So that's why the art is twisted. Let's see here. Harry says that film traumatized my father when he was an adult. I think we're talking about Clockwork Orange. Oh, damn. Cassiel says, a good movie to recommend to your grandma. For those who don't know or haven't seen Clockwork Orange, don't show that shit to your grandma. Just don't do it. Let's see here. Harry says, finally, a comic with bad art, like a film, is like a bad montage, lighting, etc. It's hard to watch, but there's always a good story. So it's just way less enjoyable. Let's see. Yeah, Harry says, for me, God of War 4 is a cool game with a great story. God of War is another series. Like, I mentioned that I stopped gaming in college, and that was mainly not out of a dislike. It's because I wanted to create more artwork, and I really did not want to sacrifice the, sometimes the 20 to 40 to 100 hours it might take to finish a game, particularly because, I was an RPG Final Fantasy guy. But even aside from that, a lot of games will still take anywhere from 20 to 60 hours to beat. So I was like, and Amar says the same thing. He says, I stopped playing games competitively in the 90s. The one game that came out that almost broke me was God of War. When the first God of War came out, I was like, because I love me some Greek mythology. I almost broke. I was like, I might need to get me a PS2 and get in on this. But I held out. I keep dreaming of a time when I'm making my personal art full time and making a living off of it, so that I'm not doing my artwork in my spare time, and then I can start gaming again as a hobby. It's really what I'd love to do, is spend a lot of time in my spare time reading books for pleasure and playing video games. That's what how I'd like to pass more time. All right, let's see here. I'm trying to scroll through some more questions here. Harry asks, what's your favorite comic book writer, artist, or artist writer? Oh, wow. That's a tough call. I lean back on a lot of the popular ones that most people know, because these guys formed my opinions when I first started reading comics in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Obviously, John Byrne is pretty high on the list. John Byrne and Frank Miller and Walt Simonson. In fact, the way that I've heard it referred to is your comic book Mount Rushmore. If you had a personal Mount Rushmore for comic creators, who would you put on it? And for me, it would be Howard Chaykin, Walt Simonson, Frank Miller, John Byrne, all writer artists. That does not mean that there aren't comic book writers that I like. I mentioned Ed Brubaker. I love Ed Brubaker's writing. I love Alan Moore's writing. I've only read a little bit of Scott Snyder's work, but I think Scott Snyder is a great writer. There's lots of comic book writers that I like, and there's lots of artists that I like. Brian K. Vaughan. I have never read a bad comic book by Brian K. Vaughan, and he always chooses great collaborators, like very diverse in terms of the art styles, but he chooses like great people that he works with. But that said, my Mount Rushmore of comic creators are all artist writers. So, I mean, that'll tell you where my heart, and that goes back to what I said before about, I don't feel like it's the writing or the art. I feel like it is the combination of both. And oddly enough, I didn't put Will Eisner on my my Mount Rushmore, which really, if you should really want to have a Mount Rushmore of artist writers, should be like Will Eisner, Jack Kirby. I'm thinking of like who are some older cats. I don't know if I would put Steranko on there. I think Steranko came in and did amazing work for what he did. I don't know if I'll put him on Mount Rushmore though. I'm trying to think of who are some other Kirby era artist writers, people who did both. I mean, I'm sure there are tons. I'm just drawing a blank right now. You know, when you even look at Frank, when I talk about Frank Miller, you look at Frank Miller's collaborators. When you look at him working with Dave Gibbons, also an amazing artist and an amazing writer. Bill Sienkiewicz. I don't think he gets enough love for his writing, but I really enjoyed the graphic novel he wrote, Stray Toasters. It's one of my my favorite comics, and I love it specifically because it's seeing Bill completely unfiltered. It's Bill's world and his weird, crazy narrative sensibilities, and it's a beautiful book. Again, if you like Salvador Dali and you like Heinrich Clay, you're gonna love Stray Toasters by Bill Sienkiewicz. Check that shit out. But the reason why I was talking about Frank Miller's collaborators: Bill Sienkiewicz, Dave Gibbons, and David Mazzucchelli. Mazzucchelli. Is it Mazzucchelli or Mazzucchelli? I think it's Mazzucchelli. He specifically, in an interview I listened with him, he corrected people in terms of his pronunciation. It was like, do not pronounce my name wrong. But I believe it's Mazzucchelli. But anyway, all three of those guys, they are great artists, but they are great writers in their own right. If you've ever read, I would also recommend Asterios Polyp. It's very much has an indie comic sensibility. It's not about superheroes. It's not about fights. It's a very human relationship and emotional story, but it's brilliantly, it's layered and deep and full of wonderful, wonderful metaphor. Let's see here. All right. Scrolling through. Byron says, I've noticed that works opposite as well. Many people I know who draw lots of cute stuff tend to be very dark individuals outwardly. Yeah, you know, I mean, I've heard things specifically. You talk about somebody like Thomas Kincaid. You know, he's known as the painter of light, and does these very beautiful nature scenes and snowy, beautiful landscapes and a lot of religious pieces. But I have heard that as an individual human being, he wasn't necessarily the nicest guy. Or that he had his demons, definitely. Like he had a drinking problem and maybe acted out some inappropriate ways. But you know what? I mean, there's people who draw dark shit that are probably also jerks. There's people who draw light shit that are also nice. I think that I don't think you can make it. It's a good point, but I also don't think there's a one-to-one correlation between the type of content someone creates and the content of their character. I think that we have to judge people in terms of how they treat each other, not necessarily the art that they make. So let's see here. Let's see here. Cassiel says, "Yep, this works to Tim Burton, I think." Let's see here. Now we're getting to the point where people are replying in the chat, and I'm not sure who's replying to what, and they're clarifying what clarifying what the comments is. So that's a rabbit hole to fall down. So let's see here. Now this is interesting. Amar says, "I am anti-drug and anti-medicine unless it's holistic." How do you feel about ayahuasca? Because it is holistic, but it's also hallucinogenic, and it's meant for taking a spiritual trip. I've never tried ayahuasca. I've heard that it's not a fun trip, but it is interesting. And I think that it's something that I would try to experience because, I don't know. I think because I don't feel like I necessarily even know myself. They say that, you know, a life unexplored isn't a life worth living. In my own mind, I feel like there's still part of my psyche that I don't necessarily even understand. And part of that is like me saying, I've tried to understand myself. There's things I've given up on, but to some degree, I've just said, all right, there's things about myself I just don't know. And hey, Ballpoint in the chat. I ain't seen you in a while. He says, "Yellow from Canada." Hey man, good to see you. Thanks for popping in. We're in the last throes of the live stream. I'm just running through some final comments and then calling it uh, um, a day here. Let's see here. Amar says, and like, oh yeah, Cassiel asks, wait, what about pharmaceuticals that doctors prescribe? And he says, I don't take it. I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis and never took any of this stuff prescribed for me. Little known fact, in the TV show House, whenever you don't know what it is and you can't figure it out, it's sarcoidosis. Or at least that's always the first guess the doctors come to, because sarcoidosis apparently is one of those diseases that has a lot of different symptoms and it's super hard to diagnose. And I can't remember what interview I was listening to, but whenever they're talking about it and they're like, we don't know what it is, I'm like, you can always guess, like, it's going to be sarcoidosis. I think I was listening to an interview with a woman who did the medical, she became a screenwriter. She started off as a medical researcher for that particular TV show. Harry says, thanks. Oh, it says, okay, thanks. Personally, I love the David Finch renderer. I think that's in terms of just favorite artists. Yeah, David Finch, I think he's an amazing artist. I actually, somewhere in my collection, I have the first couple of issues of an old, the first thing that I think he did at Top Cow, this book called Ascension. It might not be the very first thing, but I think it was the very title that was his own title. Anyway, getting into long conversations about medication. And let's see, moving away from that, Amar says, Frazetta will always be my top of the ladder. Yeah, I mean, Frazetta is a master. And I think I'd shown before, I got 2 Frazetta books for the first time I was really diving into him. And I did a Frazetta master study on the live stream. I'm going to go back and do some more Frazetta master studies at some point. Let's see here. Philip says, Tim Gula is my inspiration. I know him by name and I have seen his work, but I haven't seen it in a while. I'm opening a window on the side so I can remember to look at more of his work later, because I just don't remember what his art looks like, but I do know that I've seen it before and it's dope. Let's see here. Cassiel says, I like a lot of artists. One of them is Mobius. I think we'll all remember my attempt to do a Mobius master study on the stream. I think I did as good a job as anyone can do trying to do Mobius and trying to do it live in front of people. It was what it was. I'm not ashamed and I apologize for nothing. Ballpoint says, judge thee by their action and not by the projection of my character. And Harry says, I gotta go, arrivederci. It's like, yeah, I gotta go too. I'm just trying to get through the rest of the comments here. All right, guys, I'm gonna scroll through the rest of the comments here to see if there's any other things. Let's see here. All right. There we go. It looks like we've caught up on all the major comments. We talked a little more medical talk there, but we're going to close stuff out here. So let me go back to the big camera. So again, everybody, thank you for the great conversations, for hanging out, for the good time we've had here. You guys always bring up interesting topics, and it's always fun just hanging out, talking to you guys, sharing time in the studio with you. So I greatly appreciate it. As I mentioned before, if you're new to the channel and you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell, because that will actually let you know when I've got new episodes coming out. For those who are Patreon subscribers, this week we've got another session of Art Book Study Group. It's a 3-hour-ish session studying some of the best art books around. We're continuing with Walt Reed's The Figure. We're deep in the anatomy section of it. So we're actually kind of doing anatomy. I was going through and doing studies where I'm like labeling muscles and doing it right from the book. So I'm showing you how I personally study to improve my own craft. And you guys hopefully can either study along with me, or you're studying your own art books and pursuing the things you want to study. But it's our mutual sitting down and sharing that process of improving ourselves as artists. You get access to that for as little as $2 a month over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jeremy, patreon.com/GERIMI. So you head over there. There's a link in the description for the video. So if you want to make it easy for you, you just go over to the description, click on that. It'll take you right over. Then sign up. There's hundreds of hours of video already up from the Art Book Study Group. You guys can check out all of that. Be able to read my comic books for free digitally. Tons of, like, it's all access. I show you pretty much what I'm working on all the time. We have a thriving Discord server there where we share work that we're working on, comment to each other, get feedback, encouragement, just shoot the shit about art or whatever else we got going on. All that's going on as a, all that and more. Signing up for Patreon. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, to get work in progress animated GIFs, and find out when I've got new artwork released, new books coming out. You can get all that for more for signing up for my monthly newsletter for free. It's at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you read physical comics for free digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll take you to my Amazon author page. It'll forward you to that page. You can pick up books like Eye of the Gods. This is my first graphic novel. It's a psychological thriller about a man who's cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent comic book series, Morning Star. It is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. There's 2 volumes. Volume 1 has issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 has issues 5 through 8, the conclusion of the story. Both volumes have tons of character sketches. They've got comic book layouts. They've got script pages, basically showing you how I put the comic book together. It's my little cheat sheet for how I make comics. All that's in those books. You can pick those up at amazon.jeremy.net. Okay. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to tell you. And if you haven't seen my comic books before and you want to take a look, I created videos. They're on the homepage of the YouTube channel. They're book flip through. So I sit down, put the book on my my drawing table, and I just flip through and let you check out every page. So if you haven't seen the books before, they're short. They're like 5-minute, 7-minute videos. You can just go through and see the whole inside of the book. So definitely go check those out if you want to see what my comics look like and you haven't seen them before. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out. It was great times. Greatly appreciated. I wish you all the best. That's it for now. Go be creative.